And alas, the return of the broken pop filter. It's still broken and it might just fall off, but I'm just praying. I mean, I'm not going to glue it in place because, I mean, it's broken and I want to replace it at some point. So, ta-da. Hashtag get Louise monetized because college is expensive. Thank you. I'm going to start reminding you to like this before I actually start the video. Just give that like button a good whack and let's actually get started. So I started doing this thing where I actually go into YouTube and I look up whatever I'm going to make a video on to see like how good of information is out there already, because I don't want to compete with like all those bigger channels. That would be stupid. So I'm going to see how I can add value on a more creative way. And I mean, I had already planned this video since like the last upload, so that was kind of very disappointing. But they didn't do what I'm going to do now. And this was not planned. I did this before and I just feel so proud of myself. So we're going to talk about orchestral textures. Stick around because once we start diving into Counterpoint, I'm going to be composing a piece of music and that's going to be more fun than anything else I've seen. And then by the end of the video, by the very end of the video, I'm going to compile a lot, I'm going to kind of finesse the content that I've written with the examples, and so you can hear a nicely orchestrated outro piece that you might actually really enjoy. We're going to dive into orchestral textures, not to be confused with orchestrational textures. Two different things. The name I have found more recurring for this type of texture is compositional texture or melodic texture. What this basically means is it dwells into the whole compositional aspect of music rather than the timbral part of music. So that's what orchestrational textures are. I can just, in a quick summary, explain what timbral textures or orchestrational textures are, and that's basically orchestration. You need to understand the timbre that each instrument of the orchestra produces. So it's kind of like a professor of mine, Chas Underreiner, said, think of orchestration as mixing with people. So you have to understand on which side of the spectrum or on which band of the spectrum each instrument lies, not necessarily on its register, but on its timbre. If an instrument has too many high frequencies, even though it's like a low instrument, let's say a gong, for example, a gong has a very low fundamental, very low. It's a very large cymbal, like suspended cymbal, a gong, but it has a lot of high frequencies, has a lot of high end, so that you have to understand these sort of things. A gong actually is like organic white noise, I guess you can say, because it covers an enormous array of frequencies. So you have to, that's what orchestrational textures are, kind of a timbre-based way of understanding music. Okay, so let's go into what this video is going to be about, which is musical compositional textures, so melodic textures. Okay, so what is texture? Ways in which melodic, rhythmic, and harmonic aspects are woven together. And if you're a Ben Shapiro fan, or if you know Ben Shapiro, then you might know that that's his whole conception of music, which is, whack. But when we're dealing with music that contains melody, rhythm, and harmony, that's sort of what we can base texture, the definition of texture, out of. So let's get more specific. Now, in order to understand texture, we're going to have to understand the following terms. First one of them being density. Density refers to how many voices are happening simultaneously. You can have a thick or a thin density. A thin density is usually one or two voices. So either a solo repertoire or maybe a duet of some sort, or perhaps a piano piece that has only two voices. Sometimes piano pieces have up to 6 voices, but like more traditional ones, more traditional romantic or classical pieces only have 2 voices. So you can think that is technically a thin density. And anything 3 and above you would consider thick. So fugues and quartets and just anything else that has more than 3 or more voices. Now range. This one I know if you play any instrument or if you sing, you don't really need me to define it, but I'm going to anyway. Range is the interval between the lowest and the highest note in a piece. You can have wide or narrow range. So again, this is very easy to understand. Narrow range is anything within 1 or 2 octaves. I see a lot of definitions say 1 octave, like strictly, but most of the sources I read defined narrow range as up to 2 octaves, and then anything else becomes a wide range. And now, time to go into texture types. You can find so many sources about texture types because it's on like AP music theory exams. So we're gonna approach the following as composers, not as analysts or theorists. Okay, so here are some examples that I have written for y'all. One of them is not my own composition, obviously, and you're gonna know which one that is. But I was just way too lazy to write an example for this because it's kind of difficult to make it work. But I took one that I already knew, and you're gonna know which one that is. But everything else I write everything for my videos, by the way. I hope you appreciate that. So, monophonic texture, single melodic line. Think of solo woodwind instruments, not with any kind of split tones or split partials. No, just like traditional woodwind solo repertoire or traditional string repertoire that doesn't have any particular doubles. So it's just a monophony. You can have monophonies with 2 voices, but they have to be in octaves, and some definitions say that it's okay to have it in parallel fifths. However, rule of thumb, 1 voice or 2 voices or many voices in octaves should be fine. Exciting. Polyphonic textures. You can think of fugues, you can think of fugato sections, you can think of anything that has 2 or more independent lines of melody. Then we're going to go into homophonic. This is the most common in piano repertoire, at least. This is also known as melody and accompaniment. You also have homorhythmic. Think of choir music. Choir music a lot of the times tends to be homorhythmic, and it basically means we talked about voice leading, and a lot of those examples were homorhythmic. Like you can see in this example right now, you find that there is no variation in rhythm. Everything tends to be chord, 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 chord. You can have non-harmonic tones that in eighth notes, for example, but for the most part, you should be chord, chord, chord in the same rhythm. You can have an interesting rhythm, but all the voices have to be aligned. It has to be completely vertical. Heterophonic. This is the example I was talking about earlier. Basically, a canon would be a good example, or anything where a melody can be repeated on itself and it would create decent counterpoint with it. It doesn't have to create decent counterpoint, but in tonal music it's satisfying, so I'm going to define it like that. So if a melody can be repeated on itself, maybe with some slight variations, and it creates decent counterpoint, it's heterophonic. Now, counterpoint. Let's talk about counterpoint. Counterpoint is very important for learning how to do nice orchestral textures. I see a lot of the time people have a lot of trouble with counterpoint because it's something that does take years to kind of finesse, to kind of get going, get good at it. But we're going to talk about counterpoint, not to be confused with species counterpoint, which sucks. Oh my lord. So we're not going to talk about species counterpoint. I guess you can sort of think about it like fifth species counterpoint because it's more free. But even then, fifth species counterpoint, you have to use the rules, not guidelines, the rules from the first 4 species and kind of combine them into this freer form counterpoint. And no, I don't want to do that. No. Why? So we're going to be talking about free counterpoint. Counterpoint where you have your cantus or you have your melody and you create counterpoint through this following terminology. I hope you find it exciting. It's super exciting, and it's going to simplify free counterpoint, and it's going to make you compose a much cooler textures for your orchestral or maybe even your pop music. Just I hope you like it. We're gonna be talking about the cantus. Cantus is derived from cantus firmus back in the Renaissance era. There used to be these folk melodies that musicians would arrange in different types of ways. Musicians would arrange these melodies in very interesting ways, and they were called cantus firmus, and that's where cantus comes from. But no one really calls it that anymore, so we are going to call it our primary melody, the main theme, is what a lot of people refer to this as nowadays. So this is our most important melodic line. Okay, now we have a secondary melody. Secondary melody creates counterpoint to the main melody, to the primary melody, but it has to be less significant than our primary melody. We have to have that sort of distinction in importance. It's very important. Okay, now we have our parallel supporting melody. We talked about this in on voice leading. So a parallel supporting melody is a melody. It doesn't have to be perfectly parallel, but it has to have a similar contour to, if it's supporting our main melody, or if it's supporting our secondary melody, to the secondary melody. But it is a melody that serves as solely a lot of the time, or a melody that just doubles in octaves, but it has slight variations. So that's our parallel supporting melody. If a parallel melody is in octaves and it resembles our main melody perfectly, then it's just a primary melody. You can double your primary melody in octaves. It's a thing. It's an orchestrational thing you can do. Static support. This is where it starts getting interesting, and if you listen to, let's say, Two Steps from Hell, it's like a really cool one. A lot of these techniques are used by contemporary orchestral composers, and we're going to talk about them now. Static support, what does it sound like? It sounds like something that's retained through time, and that's exactly what it is. The very first one of which is called drones. Drones are just a single note held throughout an extended period of time, even when there's a change of harmony or melody. This line can be sustained or it can be in an even pulse. Yeah. And then we have our pedal tone, which is the exact same thing as a drone, but it has to be in the bass. That's what differentiates a pedal tone from a drone. Pedal tones in the bass, drum can be wherever it wants. It can be the soprano, alto, tenor, wherever. Exciting one, ostinato. Ostinato is a repeating pattern of it can be. Most of the time it's an arpeggiation of the harmony, and it supports the harmony, so it might change with the harmony. But the contour of the ostinato has to be a pattern that gets repeated over and over. Harmonic rhythmic support. This is very easy to understand. It's just a rhythm added to the cantus, to the main melody, to like sort of give it momentum, sort of push it forward, while also giving it harmony. This can be done with staccato notes on strings. It's very commonly seen that way. You can see it in John Williams' music. I can't put any of this here because I'm scared of I'm not even monetized yet, but don't want to end my career before it starts. Now you can also separate harmonic rhythmic support into harmonic support and rhythmic support, which is exactly what it sounds like. Harmonic support is just basically chords changing with the harmony of the melody, because melody has implied harmony, in case you didn't know. You can reharmonize a melody, but it has a certain harmonizations kind of. You cannot just put, well, I mean, if it's jazz, of course you can, or if it's more or if it's newer music, you can do whatever you want. But if you're writing tonal music bound to the guidelines of tonality, then there's a finite amount of harmonizations of ways to harmonize a melody. So harmonic support, chords that change with the melody. Rhythmic support mostly refers to percussion. You can do rhythmic support with pitched instruments, but it's mostly a thing reserved for percussion. So I hope that was a good way to, a simple way to think about counterpoint. It definitely helps a lot to be more objective about your musical definitions. As I always say, please like, share, subscribe, and just do all those great things. And I hope you don't get tired of this, because I plan on saying it after every video. But keep writing. As long as you don't stop, you will continue to get better. And I hope this video wasn't over 40 minutes long again. Please God. Oh, and as promised, here is what I did with those melodies from Counterpoint, and this is the final result.